Welcome into the FanSpeak Network. I am your host, Justin Bruni. Joining me tonight is my co-host and partner, Mr. Andrew, the TD King, Raub. And a very special guest this evening is our boss, Mr. Steve Shoup. How are we doing, gentlemen? Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, doing good. Excited to join you guys. Talking some best ball, always fun. So yeah, very excited to be on tonight.
Yes, sir. As always, man, repping the nice underdog cap here. Do rep underdog probably more than than I really honestly should. It's like every other day I have some sort of underdog apparel on. We just went to this indoor water park and I wore my underdog shirt to the indoor water park. Not in the water, of course. I'm not a maniac, but I did wear it there and I got a few looks when people walk by and it always makes me wonder, are they on underdog?
I feel like someone would say something like, I wear the shirt too,
Yeah.
and nothing. I get nothing, just never going to happen. But that would be nice, actually, meet another best baller in the real streets, as we like to draft in the streets. Tonight, we are going to be talking about ADP tracking, courtesy of BBMD.com. Love what they're cooking up over there for us, allowing us to be able to track player trends and their ADP throughout our best ball summer as we march forward every day, one step closer to Best Ball Mania 5. If you guys aren't on Underdog Fantasy just yet, be sure to sign up over there and use promo code FanSpeak for a 100% deposit bonus up to $250 now, quite a bit larger than the usual 100, so you can get in on some extra plays in Best Ball Mania. I'm going to go ahead and get the board pulled up here, and we're going to dive right into the conversation. You guys want to start with running backs or receivers for some ADP breakdown here? What are your thoughts?
Let's go running back.
Let's go RB. All right. We are going to go from the top of the board here. We're looking at the top climbers. We've got Tyrone Tracy Jr., Kamani Vidal, Marshawn Lloyd, Damian Pierce, and Keandre Miller rounding out the top five there. I'll kick it over to you first, Steve. What names are surprising you here, and which players are you buying at their current rise or selling at their current rise?
So I think Tracy is the biggest surprise. One, he is the biggest jump, tripling some of the guys at the bottom of the top five. And, we're talking about a guy who most of his college career was a wide receiver, switched to running back. He's definitely more of a pass catcher in that role, kick returner. That's also probably with the new kickoff rules, partly why he got drafted. Yes, you can point to the Giants' backfield being a little bit more open than other situations, but if anything, he maybe gets a passing role in one of the weaker offenses in the league. And we're talking underdog here, half-point PPR. Maybe in a full-point PPR site, it'd be a little different, but I'm not too excited with that right now. The ones I am buying, I do like Lloyd. I think he will, supplanting Dylan as the number 2 back. On that team and on the Packers. And, he has some pass catching ability. He's got some explosive ability. I think just is a strong handcuff and that you're getting in the, 140s for what could be a pretty good offense with what we saw the Packers last year, given all their injuries, they were a good offense. Another year of Jordan Love, another year with those young receivers. This could be a very explosive offense. So I like Lloyd. There's a lot of value for any games, of course, that Jacobs miss.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm actually surprised more about Kamani Vidal. Not a big bump, only up about 8 spots. But Andrew, is that just the the casual disrespect of J.K. Dobbins? Oh, he's going to get hurt again. Gus Edwards, not that impressive. Kamani Vidal, maybe this is just recency bias due to the NFL draft. What do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if you remember a few shows back when we did with Megan. I'd brought this up. Our old coworker Dave Heilman. If you haven't already checked him out on Twitter, you definitely should. He has a lot of good stuff he puts out about rookies, and he did an appreciation post for him because in college, in FBS, like he was awesome. I think it's just the unknown of what he could do in an offense where they're expected to run the ball pretty heavily. I know that they brought over 2 guys that the offensive coordinator already knew, but I think it's still up in the air towards the middle to end of the year who's going to be the starting running back. I do expect it to be Gus Edwards in LA, but At the same time, like J.K. Dobbins is there and he hasn't really done it. Could he? Sure. I mean, he came out of college, with a high prospect, but I think it's the unknown of Vidal, and I think it's still a good pick. I mean, ADP 160, it's not really going to kill you. I mean, he's usually probably going to be your 5th running back at that point, so I think it's still a good pick on an offense that will see a lot of volume. But there's a guy here that I pointed out 2 shows ago, Justin, when we talked about him, and that's Dameon Pierce. He came out, the GM came out and said that they definitely want to use him a little bit more than they did last year. If you remember his rookie season, he was awesome. I wrote about him as a guy I was targeting at the end of drafts that year, and he was great. Obviously last year it didn't pan out for him. Devin Singletary took over the slot. Now insert Joe Mixon. But still, I mean, Dameon Pierce is the 2 on the team, on a team that's going to have probably a lot of red zone, green zone opportunities. We expect the Texans to be just as good, if not better than what they were last year. So I like that one a whole lot. I mean, where he's going, you're not going to find a lot of number 2 running backs there. I think you can hang your hat on. He's a number 2. He's going to get some volume. And if Mixon goes down, he's going to get a lot more. I mean, they don't have Devin Singletary there anymore. So it's really him and a bunch of no-name guys, there. So those are probably the 2 I like the most there. But shout out Kendre Miller, because I also like Kendre Miller a whole lot. I just like that offense. I like that they play in a dome. I like that Alvin Kamara is not a spring chicken anymore. So, Kendre Miller is somebody that I have a lot of exposure to as well.
Yeah, I think the guy that I like here the most is probably Dameon Pierce and then Marshawn Lloyd. And that's really based off of the ADP, like where you're getting him at. Even at 192, and he's moving up 5 or 6 spots, that's at no cost whatsoever. And each of these guys, they're all sleeper running backs. I mean, the lowest ADP that we have is Marshawn Lloyd at 146. And I want to say that's like mid to late 12th round. So that's still very good value for a guy that you can get as your 4th or 5th running back. I'm with you, Steve. I think that he will supplant A.J. Dillon as the number 2 there. LaFleur loves to use his running backs. He's got a nice stable, even with A.J. Dillon. And I think they're going to get some juice out of Marshawn Lloyd for sure. A guy, like you said, can be used in the red zone, can catch passes. Pierce is just in a very nice offense. Like you said, Andrew, like it's a very good situation for him. I'm not buying a ton of Tyrone Tracy. I think it's a nice little piece for your dynasty teams. But right now, I'd like to get a little bit more clarity out of that backfield. I could still see them make a potential move if there's one available. And Vidal is just someone that's, kind of buried in that situation. Miller could be nice, but I don't know. I don't love it. I think that Kamara does still get the bulk of the touches there, and you're waiting for an injury. And they still have Jamal Williams under contract as well there. I think he had signed a 2-year deal that started last year. So they also have a nice stable there, and I want to expose myself to the player that's going to have just more opportunities right out of the gate. We're going to switch over to some fallers. So a little bit different here, a little bit higher ADP, kind of bouncing in and out. We've got Chuba Hubbard way back there at 167, falling even more. Josh Jacobs inside the top 40 ADP, but falling about 6 spots. J.K. Dobbins backed up to a similar territory as Kamani Vidal. It looks like maybe they're swapping some ADP. He's down 6 spots. Braylon Allen down 6 spots as well. People, I think, were higher on him, coming into the draft. He's falling a little bit, falling in line behind Breece Hall. And then James Cook, that's pretty surprising to me at 52.4. Minus about 3.74 spots. That's kind of interesting. That's across the last week. We'll shift over to bi-monthly basis here in a moment. But Steve, what are your reactions here out of this top 5 group of fallers at the running back position?
Yeah, so I definitely understand why Dobbins is falling, coming off a major injury. Vidal, Edwards, they still have, some other guys on the team, and another team that could just look to bring in guys still, as we know they want to run the football. And Dobbins is coming off not just 1, but 2 back-to-back serious injuries. So I get that one. The one that surprises me that I'm definitely looking to buy and scoop up here, well, 2, Josh Jacobs, him falling half a round, I'll take that because, like I just said, that Packers offense is going to be, I think, very, very good this year. But Chuba Hubbard, I know everyone, they get Brooks in the draft, and Brooks is no doubt a stud running back, but he's also coming off a major injury. And we saw this with, Breece Hall last year. Hall had a couple games early in the season, but it was because he broke like 70-yard runs that he was fantasy relevant. He just wasn't doing it. And that was, Carolina Hubbard was good down the stretch. He's the best part of their offense, him and Thielen. I know that's shocking for people to hear, but they were the absolute keys to the offense last year. It should be a better offense. I think Brooks, Hubbard might not be there much for you in the playoffs, but he could help you throughout. And again, you're getting him so late here. If he's your fifth running back and he's a guy who's filling in all your bye weeks, just giving you some good 20-point games early in the season from a running back in this low that you're getting him, I mean, that's a steal. Even if he's totally supplanted by Brooks come playoff time, I'm fine with it because I feel like you're getting good value for what could be the guy getting 15 to 20 carries early in the season.
Yeah, I like that. Andrew, anything to add in here with this group? Anyone that you're looking to buy, completely staying off of? I know James Cook was a big guy for you last year.
Yeah, I mean, I get why James Cook is falling a little bit. They did bring in Ray Davis for what's that's worth. I mean, what have we seen Buffalo do, over the last 2 years is bring guys in that they want to, have at the goal line. I mean, they tried Leonard Fournette, they tried, oh my God, yeah. So like they've tried to do that, and maybe Ray Davis is the guy that kind of gets them over the finish line for a guy that they can use around the goal line outside of Josh Allen. Obviously, we know he's going to get his. So I get that a little bit. I'll still take him, and obviously if he's going to keep falling, that's just going to make him more attractive to me. But the guy here that I think that I've been targeting a lot because of how I draft is Najee Harris. Again, I don't really understand. I get Warren. I like Warren, but I mean, they have a new offensive coordinator who showed last year to use 2 running backs a lot. I mean, I'm okay taking both of them, but Najee Harris, I mean, he's just a guy that gets you 1,000 yards every year, and his touchdowns are, kind of up and down, but he's a guy that around the goal line, they're probably going to use him more than they use Warren around the goal line. So in underdog scoring, touchdowns are very important. That's a guy that I hope he keeps falling because I'll just keep scooping him up. But outside of that, I mean, I get a lot of these other guys, falling a little bit. James Conner's older, I guess the other one that I don't know. The other two, I don't, I guess, really understand the fall, and it's only 2 spots for both of them is White and Mostert. Both of them, White's an absolute animal, and that dude's going to get a ton of work. And Mostert, I mean, if he does anything like he did last year, this is an absolute steal. I know everyone has the hard on for Achane, which is understandable. He was very electric, but again, he didn't stay healthy. I still think that, taking a guy in Mostert that's probably going to get at least 40 to 50% of the work, even if, Achane does supplant him, he's still going to get a bunch of work in an offense that's high powered, that showed to run the ball very effectively. So both those guys, I think, should not be falling. And I'm not sure that they continuously will. But yeah, so I mean, there's guys here that I really like. It's funny that some of these guys are falling.
No, I absolutely love it. There's a lot of names here that I'm buying. Raheem Mostert, not in the top 5, but yeah, he's falling, and I'm buying every little bit of it I can. I have plenty of builds so far with him as my 4th or 5th running back, which I'm very content with because he's in a high scoring offense, like you said. When they're gonna be a top 5 scoring team, and he's gonna have some exposure to the red zone, that's really all that you need, specifically at that ADP. And we'll talk about him a little bit later because I do have him as a potential riser from his current situation. Looking at the other players covered here, love Chuba Hubbard, averaged 9 fantasy points per season last year in half-point PPR. Great value. They're going to have to work Brooks in to the lineup, coming off of an ACL tear last November. So I don't expect him to have a huge workload regardless in year 1, even if he is, like a week 13 and beyond, like stud. Those first 2 weeks, like Steve said, are very valuable. Per an Adam Thielen drafter like myself last year. Yeah, he was terrible down the stretch, but he did big enough things for me to, really improve my advance rate and put me in a good position where my other opportunities closed for me to have a good finish of the season. Love James Cook. Like I said, if you're getting him anywhere after ADP, that's fantastic. Josh Jacobs is a huge faller here, and he's in a run-heavy offense that wanted him badly. They paid up for him. Yeah, they drafted a rookie running back, but again, LaFleur loves to run the ball. There's no rhyme or reason to his play calling, and that's because he just loves to bounce off of, pounding the ball into the ground, running play action. Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd will be a big part of their offense, 2 players that we've covered so far. And yeah, Najee Harris, you were saying the touchdowns may be inconsistent. He's got 28 through 3 seasons. And he's never missed a game. it doesn't get much better than that at the running back position at ADP 88. I'll take him 5 spots ahead, let alone taking him 4 spots back. So love some of these names here. I would continue to sell the Braylon Allen drop. I'm good with that. I'm also good to continue to sell the Elijah Mitchell drop. They're always drafting a running back. Like, they're always waiting for like the next guy to boom in that 49ers backfield. It's just very hard to trust, despite his explosive rookie season. I was a big fan of his after that first year. I had to eat some apples after that. You know, it was tough, had to swallow it, but I had to pay my dues. All right, so we're switching over now to the month-by-month basis at the running back position. Steve, any big names that are jumping out at you here? Obviously, a huge jump for Ezekiel Elliott landing back in Dallas, where it's a clear and empty running back room. Like, you know, it's just ponies, you know, when you're considering it a stable. Very uncertain room there. You also see Rico Dowdle up there at what is that, number 5 or number 6. So these are the month-by-month raisers, you know, taking into a huge effect of NFL free agency and the NFL draft. What is jumping out at you here, Steve?
Yeah, you know, I'm fine going Ezekiel Elliott, and I think you should have some Dowdle also. I mean, we're talking the Cowboys offense. It's been, as long as Dak is healthy, this is one of the best offenses in the league. Doesn't matter what the coordinator changed last year. It was tremendous. Dak actually led the league in passing touchdowns. And that's because they couldn't run the ball. Elliott is a goal line guy. You know, 2 years ago, when it was him and Pollard, Elliott still was like 18th in half-point PPR scoring, something like that. Like, or
I believe they both had over
like
1,000 rushing yards. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, he was still very effective in that role. And we saw last year with the Patriots, when Stevenson went down, he was very effective in that terrible offense. So, you know, there's still enough juice there. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be getting 35-point games, anything like that. But again, we're talking ADP 128. This is your third, fourth running back. You should, you know, this is a guy who's filling in for every bye week, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm totally good with him. And Dowdle a little bit as well. I really like Zamir White. They didn't do anything in the draft. They only have Alexander Madison there. Sign me up for Zamir White. We know that, you know, with Gardner Minshew and Antonio Pierce and that team, they're going to want to run the football. Zamir White looked good down the stretch. They beefed up their offensive line a lot. So I like that. And then the other one I'll mention is Zach Moss. I know they have Chase Brown, but you know, I think Zach Moss could crack that starting lineup and be the guy. We're getting a starter in the 90s here. I mean, we saw this with guys like James Conner, Dave Montgomery, Brian Robinson in this range last year, and guys who, you know, their role was a little uncertain, but if it was enough of a role, in case of all three, it was, they were fantasy studs. So yeah, and Zach Moss is attached to a really good offense, and we saw how effective Joe Mixon was, you know, as the top guy in that team last year. I think Moss won't necessarily have as big of a role Mixon had, but, you know, you're taking Mixon in the 4th, 5th round, you're getting Moss much, much later. So those are the guys from this month-long list that I'm really targeting.
How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add. You know, I agree with a lot of stuff that Steve was saying there. I really like Zamir White. I mean, again, they did nothing, and that dude's going in, you know, ADP 81. I mean, it's a starting running back for you. So it's a great 0 RB target. You know, if you want to get somebody who's going to have a lot of volume, and their defense is actually pretty good. So even if you think that because their QB situation sucks, it's bad. I still think they're going to be in game. So that's going to, you know, lean to him getting consistent work. So I want to pose a question here, and I think I know the answer just because we're still early in drafting, but don't you feel like some of these guys you want to kind of get away from a little bit because of how high they've risen? You're not getting, you know, the value on them that people that were drafting them before. Now with that said, you know, and again, like, I'm a guy that I want to make sure that when I'm drafting a player, I feel good at the value I'm getting him. If I look at this list and see Zeke, you know, he was going 77 spots lower than he is now, that makes me like not want to draft him because I'm not getting, there's players in teams that already have him at a better value than what I can currently get him now. With that said, we are still in the preemie stage of BBM. So I think now it's still okay to do it. But if we have this conversation in a month from now and we see guys not on this list that have, you know, risen a whole lot, it's going to make me not want to draft him. So right now I'm in the camp of, when I'm drafting, I'm trying to find players that I think are going to rise a little bit, want to draft them and not, you know, lose the value on it. But It's just the way I draft. But I mean, there are guys here that I'll still take. Like, you made the good case, Steve. I hate the Cowboys, hate Zeke and all that, but he is a goal line back. And again, we're trying to find the touchdown players. So if he's going to be a guy that lucks into 9 or 10 touchdowns, but only has 700 yards, it's fine. That's still where he's going, ADP 128. But keep in mind, people, that you definitely want to make sure that you're not drafting people you're losing a ton of value on based off of where other people have already drafted them.
Well, the protocol here for really all of these guys, because if you look at their ADP, is you don't want to leap on them because you know that the market is pulling them up. So you should be targeting them potentially at ADP or thereafter where you know they are a better value. So if Zeke is going at 128, again, I think that's round, let me see, I think that's like round 10.
11, 13, or 12.
13.
I have 128 at 11.
Or
yeah,
11,
11,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. So like round 11, if you're getting him in round 12 or 13, because that draft was, I don't know, centric of Eagles fans or something like that, whatever, right? Like if you know that he's going to fall or you see him falling, then I think he is still a value. But yeah, you wouldn't want to run first to these guys. You would want them to fall a little bit because you know that the market is going to be higher on them and you can leverage other players you're targeting at their ADP, excuse me. So like Zamir White, for example, he's going at like the 7-8 turn. If you're getting him at mid-round 8, fantastic. You don't want to move him up to mid-round 7 or early round 7 because you know that people are pulling him up and you can just rightly so take someone else of value at his ADP.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Yeah. Makes sense.
Just to wrap up some of these names here, I think that really, again, any of these guys at their ADP is fine. Like, again, you don't want to overspend on some of these players. I like Zach Moss. I'm hearing that he could be just the lead guy there, and they're just going to 1-2 it between him and Chase Brown. Dame Pierce, like we've said before, prolific offense. They've got weapons. They're going to score a lot. They're going to be in the red zone. Good situation. Just one of the better handcuffs, and the value is like ridiculous. 192 is like, that's round 17 for sure. Like that's crazy. That he's still gonna and he will climb. That's just a fact. So some of these guys, like Dame Pierce, still willing to buy because I think he'll climb more. Zamir White, maybe he does climb more, but again, someone I just want to take at ADP. We've kind of already covered Tyrone Tracy. I just feel like the Giants are weird and they could add somebody like a Cam Akers or something, like just do something just off the wall. So I'm very hesitant to do that. And Ray Davis, we've talked about a bunch. I'm just a big James Cook guy, similar to Andrew, walking around last year, at the Fantasy Football Expo saying he's going to be an RB1. No issues with that whatsoever. Underdog had his yards at a ridiculous 600 last year off of a 500+ rookie season with very little touches. Was a very good situation last year, so we'll continue to buy him as well. Let's switch over to receiver. And we're going to look at, we'll just stay with the risers, top guys that are climbing right now across the past month. Andrew, Keon Coleman, I'm going to start with you here. I'm not seeing Brian Thomas Jr. around anywhere here. What's going on?
Maybe Brian Thomas Jr. was higher on the list than Keon Coleman, which is why you don't see such a rise for him.
That's true.
When Underdog put those ADP and they knew who the better wide receiver was going to be this year. So, I mean, hey, I have no problem with Keon Coleman. I just think that, Brian Thomas could have a better season, more just a better overall wide receiver. So you know how I feel about that.
No, absolutely. Me and Andrew, we got a nice little board battle going here between Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas Jr. I just think the path to the watering hole is a lot clearer for Keon. I think it's a nice breezy walk. And I think Brian Thomas has got to walk through the tough streets of, Evan Ingram and Travis Etienne and Christian Kirk and $1 million man Gabe Davis. I don't know. I think it's going to be tough.
Oh, God, please.
This kind of sucks because we both like Keon Coleman. The cost is getting a bit much. He's up quite a bit, up to pick 70. Same for Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy going ahead of him. After that, you obviously see a big drop in the selection here of ADP and who's climbing and who's falling. A lot of it is relevant to the NFL draft. Jermaine Burton, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Polk. I'm not sure about Demarcus Robinson or what's going on here. Steve, what's jumping out at you for these some of these immense risers? Like these are actually pretty big shifts across the last month for the top 10 guys here.
Yeah, no, and I think it's it's where the dominoes fell with the draft. Coleman, McConkey, and Worthy all tied, and even Burton tied to elite quarterbacks. And Coleman, McConkey, and Worthy, especially Worthy with their Rashee Rice issues, could be number one wide receivers on their respective teams. So that's just absolutely huge. I mean, Worthy is a little bit more competition with Marquise Brown, but I mean, McConkey's going against Palmer and Quentin Johnston, you know, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel. Like, I like those odds, especially when we're touchdown hunting with Keon Coleman, and that's where his value is. So I'm all aboard Keon Coleman. The idea that we could get, you know, think of this last year where you could get Josh Allen's number one receiver at pick 70. You could get Justin Herbert's number one receiver at pick 69. You can get Patrick Mahomes' number one receiver at pick 57. I mean, those are great things, and it's not a Sky Moore that we're taking or somebody like that, or Kadarius Toney. It's actually somebody who probably couldn't catch the ball. So yeah, no, I like all those guys, and I go further. I'm actually a big Jermaine Burton fan. I think you know, historically we've seen Tyler Boyd be one of the best wide receiver threes in fantasy the last couple of years when Joe Burrow's been healthy. So you know, he should kind of walk into that role. I know they have Isovius and you know, Charlie Jones and a few other guys there, but I think Burton is going to have that role. And of course, if anything happens with Higgins holding out or getting traded, Burton's value just skyrockets. And we've seen both Higgins and Chase miss time due to injury the last couple of years. So again, another situation that if Burrow's still healthy, that situation's skyrocketing. So a guy at 160 for one of the most clear-cut wide receiver 3 roles in the league out there, I'm good with.
Yeah, I love it. And the Bengals just pass the ton out of the ball. Like, they just love to sling it around. And you have, you know, some more inexperience at running back. So I think that can throttle the passing game as well, you know, when they're kind of balancing 2 running backs here. Andrew, what's up with Luke McCaffrey? Like, I asked you about this, and, you know, you're kind of modest about it. Like, it's not going to be a thing. The public thinks a little differently here.
Sure. And I do think that the reason we see some massive jumps for some of these guys is the public is getting smarter. The casual drafter is getting smarter and knowing that you need to stack with your quarterbacks to be successful in best ball. So I do feel like, you know, and that's probably a massive reason why Keon Coleman has jumped so much, is that people want to stack him with Josh Allen or a team stack with James Cook or Kincaid. You know, like, people are wising up to how to draft these teams and, you know, to be successful. So I do feel like some of this may be fictitious numbers a little bit due to the fact of it may not be the player, it might be the situation and or the stack potential. You know, with that said, you know, you said about McCaffrey. One, people see the name McCaffrey and they're like, oh yeah, this dude's going to be a star, right? It's his brother is making him. So it you know, so I think that's a little bit of it, but I'm not buying into the McCaffrey hype yet. Only due to the fact of Washington's going to want to run the ball a little bit. They're going to want to play really good defense. They have 2 backs that can definitely you know, handle the bulk of the work. And now you have Jaden Daniels, who's going to run the ball himself. It's going to take opportunities away from the wide receivers. I still like Terry and Dotson. So, I mean, he's not passing either one of those guys. Personally, I don't think he's better, obviously, than he's definitely not better than Terry, but I don't think he's better than Dotson either as far as a sure-handed wide receiver. So I'm not going to buy the McCaffrey thing yet. I think he'll fall a little bit. Sure, we'll see some plays, you know, during OTAs and all that, you know, look nice, but I don't really think that this is going to continue. So I'm going to sell that McCaffrey's going to keep rising, and I'll wait to take him with Jaden Daniels until, you know, probably middle of June into July at some point when he's down a little bit. The ones that stick out to me here, and I did want to say one more thing about Keon Coleman, just because I can't see why he's rising so much, is when they promoted Joe Brady to offensive coordinator, did they not start to sling it around to kind of everybody on the team and not just focusing on one guy? Like, I feel like the key to success for the Bills is going to be obviously play really good defense, but then make sure they're spreading the ball around so that nobody's getting hyper targeted, and, you know, they're not going to have 2 guys on Keon Coleman or 2 guys on Kincaid. They have a plethora of guys that can you know, be serviceable for them. Plus Josh Allen also runs the ball too. So you know, that's the last thing I'll say about Coleman is I think it's a little bit of fictitious numbers here for him.
I think he fits the Diggs role very well. I think that's what it is. I think
how many targets was Diggs getting at the end of the year when Brady was?
You're right. He did have less targets down the stretch, but it's not like you were ever oh yeah, I'm going to sit Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's a high caliber player and he's in a high value position in a prolific offense. Like if you're getting Stephon Diggs red zone targets, I think that's enough for Keon Coleman at that ADP. Now, I don't want to, again, going back to the running back conversation, like pull these guys up. I don't want to make them superheroes by any mean, but drafting them at their ADP or after, if you can, is fantastic value. Being a guy that's going to come in and play the majority of the snaps in an offense that's going to score a ton of points. It was a very similar argument to James Cook last year. Obviously, he was a sophomore last year. It's a little different, coming in as a rookie, but there's a clear path to like that top two, in targets conversation. And, you and I both agree that it's probably Dalton Kincaid because he's the type of guy that can slash inside and outside a lot more easily, with a lower, friendlier A-dot, et cetera, in an offense that's going to be volatile, where the ball is going to go everywhere. We probably agree it's going to go to Dalton Kincaid the most. But at least of the receivers, I think that Keon Coleman can have the most high-value targets either in the red zone or the big stretching plays downfield. Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, they're going to make their bread, but they're not like those big physical guys that are going to go up and get it. This is what Keon Coleman can be, and that's what Stephon Diggs was for the offense.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Diggs' game log. So I believe Joe Brady was promoted in November. Let's just say it was November. So mid-November, right? Diggs, from there on, this is his yardages for every game: 27, 74, 24, 48, 29, 26, 87. Don't love that.
What's the touchdown? That's super volatile. That's super
touchdowns after November or from November 19th on. Un, 1.
Ouchie.
Not great, Bob.
It's not great, kids.
So, I mean, his targets were okay. From then it was 8, 11, 11, 5, 8, 7, 8. So up and down. I think that was kind of more game scripted. Like the games that he had 11 in, one was against Kansas City. So that's kind of to be expected. You want your superstars to do that. The other one is the OT loss to the Eagles. So that kind of hyped that number up a little bit because it went to OT. So again, I'm not going to fully fade Coleman by any means. I want a piece of him. It's just if he keeps rising, it's going to be somebody that I'm not comfortable taking in because I can't see him, going ballistic.
Well, as we said last week, we don't want to overhype the rookies, but the guys with the clear-cut scenarios, like we saw out of Puka last year. Who else did we reference that had a clear path last year?
Jane Reed had a pretty clear path. Rasheed Rice,
Rasheed Rice,
but nobody good.
Yeah, right, exactly. So he kind of fits that mold, where you're looking at Khalil Shakir. Okay, yeah, he can, play out of the slot. You're looking at Curtis Samuel. Yeah, he can break some big plays downfield. But is Curtis Samuel going to come in and be Stephon Diggs? Probably no one will be. No one's going to get like 140, 150, 160 targets. But Keon Coleman getting 110, 120 targets in that offense, constantly being on the field in the red zone, sign me up. Again, I agree with you. We don't want to overpay for anybody, especially rookies. So we're on the same page there. Dipping back into the rest of these guys, I'm actually opposite of you, Steve. I'm higher on the Joshua Palmer ADP versus Ladd McConkey. I think that he does fall at some point, just because he is, very close to the NFL draft. I feel like he's someone that's going to fall down the board the closer or the farther we move in through the offseason, and I think he'll be of better value. What do you guys think about OBJ? I mean, only 46% drafted here. I mean, is he going to play a role in Miami? Are you taking him at that 197? Are you taking Malik Washington? What are your guys' thoughts there before we move on off of receivers?
I've started taking, and this is only in a couple of puppies so far, but I have taken OBJ in a couple of puppies and other drafts, just late in the draft, because they signed him. I think he's a veteran. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets has that number 3 role. I mean, in a much lower volume passing offense, with the Ravens last year, he had a couple okay spike weeks. So yeah, I could see him being all right. And it's just a situation where, of course, they had nobody beyond Hill and Waddle last year. So they needed guys. Malik Washington is tiny. I think OBJ, even though he's not what he was, 5 years ago, he's still a talent. Like I said, he still had a couple good games last year with the Ravens. So I'm fine taking shots at him this late. I mean, if he moved up to the, 13th, 14th round, no. But that late, sure, I'll take shots at him.
Yeah, that's fair. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna. I have drafted him once with a Tua stack, and I by accident auto drafted him when I couldn't make up my mind, and I by accident let the clock hit 0. So I did auto draft him once as well.
Accident,
Um,
Andrew.
it,
You,
it
I
was
don't
yeah.
believe it. I don't believe it.
The other thing, for him is if his divaness comes out, where he's like, I need to get the ball. Like I think Mike McDaniels is kind of that players coach that's going to be like, you know what? Yeah, let's get you the ball a little bit. He's
There's
definitely not
yeah.
surpassing Hill or Waddle, right? But if he throws a fit, like we've seen him, kick the thing on the sideline, the net. Like if he starts doing some of that stuff, I think he actually gets his way a little bit in this offense. But I do like Malik Washington, so I'd rather take Washington. But again, like I think OBJ's an okay pick here. If he keeps climbing, it's an auto fade for me for sure. But at 197, it's fine. Um, how do you guys feel about Malachi Corley? I
Mhm.
like Malachi Corley a whole lot. Mike Williams is number 2 on that offense. Last time I checked, Mike Williams doesn't know how to land on his feet when he catches a ball. He consistently is
Terrible.
getting hurt. And we've already seen Malachi Corley get a shout out from Aaron Rodgers. They're going to be bunkmates. So I like Corley, and I know he's creeping up the board a little bit, but he's still at a pretty cool ADP. Is this somebody that you guys are okay drafting? Are you targeting him? Is he just completely off your board?
I'm definitely taking
Stacking.
him in
Yeah.
Roger stacks for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
In that range, another name on the list, Jalen Polk, is a little higher. So if I'm not working on a stack and I need that kind of 6th, 7th receiver, I'd take Polk, who has a legit shot to be the number 1 there, or even a
Mhm.
guy like another rookie, Roman Wilson, who's probably just sliding into the Deontay Johnson role for the Steelers, which, as we saw last year, and last year's terrible Steelers offense was valuable. So it should only be better going forward. So, but Corley, I definitely want him in Rodgers stacks because I do see the upside.
1000% agree with you. If you're getting Rodgers, you're getting him late. You have later options like Mike Williams, like Andrew referenced, Malachi Corley, and Alan Lazard still there. So I like those potential late round builds with the Jets. Ty Conklin, who we brought up a few times. Ty Conklin stand right here. That's me. So yeah, very affordable. It's not that I like prefer any one over the other. If you guys watched last week, I love Mike Williams. I'm a big fan, so I'm definitely getting some Mike Williams. But I'm just balancing that out with Malachi Corley, Alan Lazard. He's not even getting drafted. I'm going to pull him up because I feel like he might be a 0%er. 7% drafted. To my surprise, he is going with the last pick. So I'm surprised to see that. But the public staying a little sharp on Alan Lazard, still an employee of the NFL and the New York Jets. Any final thoughts here before we move on to tight end?
I will. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
2 points I will make lower on this list. I love Rashid Shaheed. I think, he's had 2 really good years for the Saints. Hopefully that Saints offense gets a little bit better. They throw a little bit more, but I think he's just a clear value where he is. And I am absolutely fading Xavier Legette. I just did not think he was really first round worthy. And then the fact that he goes to a team like the Panthers, who have 2 veteran receivers ahead of him, not to mention Migo last year, and just probably not a top tier offense. So he's a guy who's a 1-year wonder in college, and just reminds me a lot like a Treylon Burks. Not saying it's going to have the exact same career path, but the idea, like Burks was the clear cut number 1 in Tennessee and was a huge bust. So for me, a guy who might be the number 3 on the Panthers, I'm going to fade at this point. I mean, if he falls really late and he's like starting to go behind like a Corley or something like that, okay, and maybe I'm interested. But where he's going now,
isn't Terrace Marshall still there as well?
Yes. Yeah, but I don't think he's in the mix.
I mean, if we're going to talk about veterans, we might as well call him one now. I mean, obviously he's not the pedigree of Thielen or Deontay Johnson, but I don't know. He just kind of is always sticking around, kind of like a Demarcus Robinson up here. Just like, the guy's still getting a paycheck. Okay, all right.
Maybe a new staff could find him. I mean, I just know he was inactive with the staff at the end of the year. But it is a new staff, and that to be said, it's a new coaching staff. Maybe he wins them over. Absolutely.
All right, cool. Anything to add in before we switch over to tight end, Andrew?
No, the only thing the 2 things. One, if anybody wants to visit the site, I did put it in the chat. It's bbmdb.com if you don't already know this. And if you want to follow the guy who runs this on Twitter, it is PD, but it's at Diablo _II, which is supposed to be 2. I'll put that on here as well if anybody wants to follow him, because he will put updates when he does do like new new stuff on BBMDB, and I believe that coming soon he'll have the actual thing out where you can look at all your teams, what the build was, when it was drafted, all of that. So very cool site, and shout out to PD because it's awesome. Without this, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now. So very cool of him. But I'll put that in the chat for anybody who wants to be able to follow him. Last thing as well is can't believe we went 40 minutes without doing this, but if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share to the FanSpeak Network, please. It helps the network. It helps all of us. Turn on the notifications so you guys know when we're going live, because we're going to be doing a plethora of live best ball drafts every week. We have at least 3 days that we have scheduled every single week to do best ball drafts, either us or Steve and Megan, Tyler, everyone. So please, definitely like, subscribe, and share with friends, family, and coworkers.
Love it. Love it. Before we move on to tight ends, we should probably talk about some fallers at the wide receiver position. Rashee Rice, obviously going through some legal troubles, clearly falling down the board. Where are you guys comfortable taking Rashee Rice now, if at all? Pick 81 gets him, I believe, to round 7-8 turn. So if you're taking him 30 spots after that, that's about another 2 rounds, maybe like round 9 or 10. Where are you guys at with this? I know some people are kind of high on the situation because they're like, oh, he'll be there for week 17. That's when we need him. It'll be fine. We can draft him with certainty with our 5th or 6th wide receiver. What are your guys' thoughts here? I'm trying to find him on my last board where he went.
Yeah. So for me, I've not really been taking him, especially with the second most group of things that just came out. I just think, well, I will say, and it could be like an Alvin Kamara situation where he's not suspended until the year after. So maybe that is the case, but the Chiefs do now have Worthy. They do now have Marquise Brown. He was probably falling in value to begin with. So honestly, his ADP maybe should be 81, in the 80s, 90s, regardless, even if he had no legal issues with those 2 big additions at wide receiver. And Kelsey still being there. So I'm just gonna let it settle more, see if we get more information. But right now I'm not taking him. I took him some earlier, but right now I'm not taking him for a while.
This psychopath that drafted with Andrew and I in our last live show took him in the 6th round at pick 68. What is wrong with you, sir? My goodness. So yeah, I don't have a great point of reference from my last draft. That's a mistake. Andrew, any thoughts to add in there? I know, you were like, oh, it wasn't so bad at first, but now it's, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it seems to be getting worse. I do agree. I do agree with Steve. I mean, this could be a thing that until the legal situation plays itself out on everything, maybe the league doesn't do anything and he doesn't get suspended this year. And at that pricing, it would be really nice to have him. I am doing a slow draft right now. It's in the Chihuahua, and he fell to me at 91. I took him as my 5th wide receiver off the board. I'm fine with that. I don't need to rely on him at that point. And if something does happen where he's not suspended very long or not suspended at all, that's an awesome wide receiver 5 to have. So I think it's more of a look at your build. What does your team need? How can it survive? If you can get him as your 4th, 5th, 6th wide receiver, I think it's fine as long as you're taking him a little past ADP. I still don't like it at 81. I prefer it in the 90s, or if it gets to 100, that's going to be a good play for me, because as well, you got to think about, if he's your wide receiver 4, let's say, you're obviously going to be drafting at least another 3 on your team. You probably don't need him to survive, but if he comes back, let's say he's suspended half the year, and you get him at the back half and you make the playoffs, or you advance, that's a great guy to have. So you got to also think about down the line, what can he do for your team? It's not about he's not going to start the year. That sucks. But, regardless, you're looking at the money at the end of the year. So he'll probably be there for you at the end of the year. So I still think it's an okay price, but I do think it's going to keep going down. And I'll be a buyer when the ADP starts hitting into the 90s. That's a fine spot for me.
I have not bought any of him now, but I'm okay doing it, in the right situation. It's a very, moment by moment opportunity for him, because if he is falling legitimately 35 picks past his ADP, I can buy anybody at that. I can buy Christian Watson at that rate. My goodness. And I, my thoughts on that, narrative. I can talk myself into that. If it's 30 plus picks, probably even 25 picks past ADP, I can talk myself into doing it. And I don't think I even blink for a second if I already have Patrick Mahomes on my roster. Yeah, I'm gonna take some shots because I'm buying and transacting in uncertainty, right? So I think that you can, leverage out of that, but you don't want to do this at a high percentage, at a high click rate. He should not be, inside your top 15 most exposed receivers, even if he is constantly landing at your feet 20 plus picks after ADP. I do still think that it's too risky. To Steve's point, when he comes back, he's still going to be behind probably Marquise Brown, who's been there healthy with the team the entire time, as long as he is healthy, and Xavier Worthy as well. If he's, going off like we're expecting him and he's, producing at, essentially the ADP that we're buying him at, there could be fewer opportunities for Rice coming back to the team, been working out separately, stuff like that, especially with Kelsey still probably being, the top target getter in the offense. So again, I can talk myself in any situation when there's really potentially that much value just landing at my feet. I can do it, but I still think like the ideal situation is use your, fifth, sixth receiver, like most ideally. Again, if he's falling that much at ADP, it should be pretty doable. Another couple of names I wanted to bring up here. Rome Odunze been falling. You obviously see his ADP the highest out of this group at 65.7, but still falling, about 21 to probably 25 picks. Last Thursday when we were live doing our draft, I was saying like 15 to 20, and then he went like right at ADP, kind of like this other sicko that took Rashee Rice well ahead of ADP. What are your guys' thoughts on the situation with the Bears and the receivers? I firmly believe as a Bears fan that this ADP is way too high for a third receiver playing behind two elite receivers in Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and, Andrew's favorite tight end, Cole Kmet.
Yeah, and I will point to the situation last year with the Seahawks where we saw Metcalf as the top guy, then JSN was going ahead of Tyler Lockett, which was insane. And sure, that was a situation with Geno Smith, but they didn't have a tight end. Cole Kmet, whatever you think of him, he's better than the Noah Fant and Will Dissly's and Colby Parkinson's of Seattle land last year. So what I will say, the one advantage that Odunze does have is he's got size. He's got the ability to be the red zone guy. He could end up being the touchdown guy on that team. Maybe he, DJ Moore, I think he had his highest touchdowns ever last year, but he's never been a big touchdown producer. Keenan Allen has been, but that's all. But he's obviously much older, and that was with Justin Herbert, who he was very familiar with. So, I just could see Odunze, his saving grace could be one of those other guys getting injured, or two, he just ends up with 10 touchdowns and is helping you
60
there.
catches.
I mean, it could be.
No, I believe it. I see it. I mean, I'm praying for it as a Bears fan. So. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, ditto what Steve just said. I mean, it's a wide receiver 3 on a team. I mean, why are we drafting him so high? I feel like, and I've said this before, but if you look through history, rookie quarterbacks do not throw a ton of touchdowns. Like, where are the touchdowns going to go in this offense? Are we going to see it on the ground? It's confusing to me a little bit. So with that said, Justin, one of my favorite segments is this guy or that guy, right? So I have the ADPs on Underdog. I'm going to take 10 spots before and 10 spots after all the wide receivers. You tell me if any of these guys you'd rather have behind Odunze, okay? Worthy. Either one of you drafting Odunze over Worthy?
No.
McLaurin?
Nope.
That's close. I'll take
close
Terry.
For you?
I'll take Terry, yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. Stop it. Jaden Reed.
Taking Reed.
Okay. Marquise Brown?
Marquise.
Yep. Yeah.
And then then Odunze slots in right here. So now we'll go 10 after. Ridley?
Absolutely.
Taking Ridley. Easy.
Addison?
Addison's a little less, but I still like Addison probably.
I agree. Addison's on my faller list, but yeah, I agree.
Okay. Ladd McConkey?
Not for me. I think
I like McConkey.
Yeah. And Keon Coleman.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
for me.
I'd put Coleman above McConkey and Odunze is the way I'd have it ranked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I
those are
agree with you, Andrew. Like the
yeah,
names that are going after him, he should rightly be behind those guys for certain. I mean, we agree that
yeah.
he's falling for a good reason. The
Yeah.
ADP is just completely mispriced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like so I think we're gonna see the fall of him continue because like I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. Like I'd rather take a lot of these guys over Odunze. I think it's just the unknown of what he could be in the offense, what he's going to be in the NFL. We know what some of these other guys are. So I think that's why he's slotted where he is. But I do see the fall behind a majority of these other wide receivers, and he's going to end up probably going right around where Brian Thomas and Chris Godwin are going, which
Mhm.
for I Godwin to me at 75 is crazy. I think he should be up a little bit as well. So I like him a little bit more. But I think that again, I think that's why we're seeing the fall is just who's going around him as well.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Agreed.
Any last notes here for this group of players? What do you think about Gabe Davis, guys? Buy or sell at this this drop? Are we leaning into it or are we staying away?
He's a follower for me. Yeah,
Mm.
I think he's going to keep following. So I like Brian Thomas a lot more than the average bear as well. But I mean, Gabe Davis to me is fighting to be the fourth guy on the team in targets. I mean, you got Evan Ingram, you got Christian Kirk, you got Brian Thomas. I think the ADP is okay if you want to take him there, but I expect him to fall. So I'll keep kind of fading him a little bit until he slots in at a lower price, and then I'll buy a little bit. Now, granted, if it's a Trevor Lawrence stack, that's a little different. Again, stacking to me is by far the thing you should be, absolutely looking to do the most in drafts. But at that said, if I don't have Trevor Lawrence, I'm probably not getting Gabe Davis right now.
That's the stacking argument's definitely fair, but again, I just don't see how he's that low in the pecking order, making nearly $40 million on his contract. But by all
Yeah.
means,
I mean, you think he's better than those other guys? Did Josh Allen not make Gabe Davis? Am I crazy?
I mean, he
He's
might have,
boom or
but
bust.
the Jags believe in him. They believe in him a fair amount, giving him as much money as they have. So, I mean, it's their analysis, not mine.
Yeah, what I will say with Gabe Davis is, I mean, look, they're all paid. I mean, Kirk is highly paid. Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram's a highly paid tight end, and Brian Thomas is obviously a first-round pick. So they've invested in all these guys.
Yeah.
What that means is Trevor Lawrence better be throwing the hell out of the ball. And what I will say is,
We would hope,
especially if you're paying attention to DFS last year or sports betting, the number of touchdowns that if the end zone was about a foot wider square last year that the Jaguars would have thrown last season would have been so much higher. I mean, the number of times where Kirk or Ingram or Ridley only got 1 foot in was insane, especially the first like 6-7 weeks. So maybe that changes this year. Maybe this offense really does take off. And what I will say about Gabe Davis in that range, there's not a lot of other receivers. This is kind of a dead area of receivers for me. There's not a ton of guys there that I'm absolutely in love with. I think Gabe Davis at the very least is a spike week guy. And you're getting him as like your 5th, 6th receiver. I'm fine with that.
So he's going around guys like Josh Palmer, Jerry Jeudy, Dotson, Brandon Cooks, Josh Downs, Xavier Legette. So I
Cooks
agree
is
with
the
you
only
there.
one I really like there.
See, I like Dotson and Cooks definitely more, and Palmer. Jeudy feels the same to me as Gabe Davis, kind of like okay, it's fine. I don't really want him if I'm not stacking him, but I will 1000% take Palmer, Dotson, and Cooks over Gabe Davis all day, every day.
I'll take any of those guys other than Legette for my 4th or my 5th receiver. Any of them, I think they're all good options. I really don't disagree with any of them.
Yep.
All right, let's move over to tight end. We're looking at the biggest fallers. This is across the past month. Some interesting names here. I mean, Michael Mayer obviously feeling it from the Brock Bowers draft pick, but look who's right behind him. Brock Bowers, 2 losers playing tight end together. Michael Mayer and Brock the accountant Bowers. Jonnu Smith somehow falling. That's interesting. I've seen a lot of Jonnu Smith getting actually moved up the board, at least in my drafts. David Njoku, Kate Otten, Isaiah Likely. Anything standing out to you here, Steve?
Well, a couple. You mentioned the Bowers. He was obviously inflated high and probably should have already been going behind guys like Jake Ferguson and Njoku pre-draft. So now I think he's kind of going where he should. And yeah, I mean, he's got Gardner Minshew. Adams is going to dominate targets there, but he could be the number 2 there and pretty highly effective. So if he's around pick 100, I'm fine with him. I like Jonnu. It doesn't really scare me that Odell Beckham's there. But the two that really stand out are Njoku and Otten. Njoku, I know he's not having Joe Flacco coming in to save his season like the end of last season. But Njoku is just so talented. If Watson can just be average, Njoku can really pay off that ADP. And then Cade Otton, we saw it down the stretch last year. We saw it in the playoffs. He just got more and more, faith from Baker Mayfield and the coaching staff. Where you're getting him, yes, I mean, he's not on the same level as like Bowers or Njoku or Evan Ingram or some of these other tight ends, but as you're like tight end 3, or a very safe tight end 2, if you're taking a very high end tight end, like a McBride or Kelsey or somebody like that, I'm fine. He's going to be out there. He's out there every pass and snap. He's probably going to be the third target on that offense, third, kind of tied with Rashid White for the third option. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Bucs offense can be pretty decent. I mean, we saw Baker and that team turn around. I know they have a new offense coordinator, but I like him, and if he's going to fall, I'll take him. And I also like taking Baker as like a third quarterback, so he's a great, easy stacking partner with Baker late.
I absolutely love that. How about you, Andrew? What's standing out here?
So yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't see Mayer following that far in most of my drafts. I actually like Mayer. Luke Getsy, this is his first time that he's going to have 2 elite tight ends or coming out of college elite anyway. Like Mayer was a high draft pick. Obviously Bowers was too. So it'll still be uncharted territory for him to have 2. But with that said, he has run a lot of 2 tight end sets. I think he ranked 7th last year or something like that, or over the last 2 years. I mean, he should be top 4 or 5 with who he has here in 2 tight end sets. So I think there's going to be opportunities to go around. Now, granted, Brock Bowers, I think, is definitely above Mayer as far as talent is concerned, and he's going to be able to earn his targets, with the way he gets open and the way he, uses his skill set. But Mayer to me is a guy I'll still target at the end of drafts as a tight end 3 in an offense that should probably use 2 tight ends, a lot. So that one surprises me a little bit. David Njoku going down kind of makes sense because I like Njoku a lot, but when we saw him be elite was with Joe Flacco, not Njoku. I mean, not Watson. So now that Watson's getting slotted back in, we'll see what happens there. Cade Otton going down is surprising to me. I mean, Cade Otton was pretty good last year in an offense that they didn't really address anything with the tight end. I know they drafted a wide receiver, but really Otton should get a plethora of targets as well. So that's somebody I like a whole lot at towards the end of the drafts. But there's nothing else that really here surprises me. I mean, as we see here, like the tight ends haven't fallen a ton outside of the top, 2. So I wouldn't say anything else really surprises me here. There's some good targets though for late round tight ends if you like to employ that strategy.
Yeah, I'm a big Cade Otton guy. He was very much a part of my late tight end target system last year. Trey McBride fit into that. Ty Conklin fit into that. Not everybody's a winner. So absolutely buying into that ADP still at 169. I feel like that, again, is a misprice. Should be higher per his performance last season. And David Njoku is tight end 11. So getting any extra value on a top 12 tight end in an offense where he can be a top target getter, sign me up all day. Going to Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers, I'm just buying the value. You can see here on the board that Michael Mayer's only been drafted in 70% of drafts. Most players are at least 97% or higher, like consistent guys. So he's an opportunity play. And like Andrew had said, Luke Getsy is going to run a lot of double tight end sets. Top 7 past couple of seasons there. So there's a lot more opportunity there. And Michael Mayer going to be a better blocker as well. So don't get me wrong, I'll build some Raiders, Brock Bowers stacks and drafts for sure, but it's got to be at a cost. It's got to be at a discount. He's someone that I'm hoping will fall, but per the Sam Laporta recency bias, that may not happen. That time may just not come. Other guys up here that I really like are Luke Musgrave and Chig Okonkwo. Chig is one of my top exposed players right now. I'm buying into the Titans. You guys had mentioned Ridley earlier. This is a team that's going to pass the ball a lot this year. That's why you bring in Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears at running backs. You're loaded up with DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. I think that Chig is going to rise with the tides of the Tennessee Titans offense. I'm a big advocate of Will Levis at his ADP. So that's just a situation that I really like. And again, at ADP 198, I can mix him into a lot of those late round tight end builds. Excuse me. I might be getting a little too excited about it because I have drafted a lot of them. I might need to slow it down. But again, someone's cost that I could see rising in this group. Anything you guys want to add in before we head over to the risers here?
I'll just say I'm 100% with you on Okonkwo and the Titans offense. Will Levis is, again, one of my favorite late quarterbacks to take. He's got, a little rushing ability. He's got some of the best weapons. They also added Tyler Boyd, who knows the offense from Brian Callahan. This is their, he didn't call the plays in Cincy, but he came from that offense. That's been one of the most efficient, best passing offenses while Burrow's been healthy. They are deep at running back, receiver. They've got a good young tight end here. I want pieces of this offense because you're getting them all at value.
Andrew, anything?
Oh, the Ben Sinnott love is crazy. A little bit. I'm as a Washington fan, I love to see it. Think he's going to be great. He's going to be awesome for Dynasty. I don't know how it's going to play out this year. Should he earn targets? Yes. Will he beat out Zach Ertz right out of the gate? Not sure as far as targets are concerned. I mean, he's George Kittle-esque, right? And we saw what George Kittle done in San Francisco, but he really didn't have anybody in front of him. I think next year, Ben Sinnott's going to be somebody we talk a whole hell of a lot about. But again, like you got a rookie quarterback that doesn't throw a lot of touchdowns, that's going to want to run the ball on a team that has two good running backs that are going to want to run the ball with a defense that hopefully will be much better than last year. I don't know where the opportunities are going to come in and add his ADP. I don't want to say it, but I haven't drafted a lot of them. I'm fearful for what happens with this ADP moving forward when we see a couple of really nice grabs from him in OTAs and training camp. I don't know. I'm not sure that the opportunities are going to be there. He might be a guy that we only see get like 60 targets, maybe. At that price, I just feel like that's not what you want there. So hate to say it, can't see that being a very good plus EV move right now as we sit here, today in May. But we'll see moving forward where that goes. But I mean, I have a best ball boner, the triple B for Dalton Kincaid, dude. I love Dalton Kincaid. This is the guy that we're looking at right now on this list that could lead his team in targets. I absolutely love Dalton Kincaid. I know it's a hefty price to pay for a tight end, but this year, the more I look at the tight ends, I feel like you want to get, for me, it's one of my top 8 guys. I want to get one of them on most of my teams if at all possible. I just want that elite tight end at a onesie position. I don't want to wait and have to grab the likes of, 3 of Hunter Henry, Tucker Kraft, and Pat Freiermuth. Like, that's fine, but the rest of your team better be awesome. I want to have an elite tight end. Yeah, right. Exactly right. It's okay, but that's not the way I want to draft this year, just based off of what I've looked at and the research I've done. And again, everyone should do their own research. I know you're listening to us, but do your own research too, so you feel comfortable when you draft. But love Dalton Kincaid. Cannot say enough good things about Mr. Kincaid.
I do want to ask you, Steve, because I know I'm pretty confident you're out on Ben Sinnott, right?
Absolutely. I might end up 0% drafting Ben Sinnott. I mean,
so
I'd much rather have Zach Ertz. Yeah.
So are we taking Zach Ertz, Andrew? Is this happening?
I am.
So I haven't yet. But I don't have a lot of Jaden Daniels stacks. It's just, unfortunately, with the way that the drafts go, I just haven't got a lot of them. I will, obviously, as a fan, I'm going to take some Jaden Daniels, but when I take Jaden Daniels, it'll be like a tight end 3 for me that I will make sure I get some stacks of. And again, I will take Sinnott, but I at the cost, Ertz is just more appealing to start the year. With that said, I did just make the caveat of, you want to be looking at the end of the year. We could see a transition, a giving of the torch essentially for Sinnott over Ertz at some point, because Ertz has been bounced around, from team to team. So it's not like we just got, a really good tight end that we signed this year, but it's ADP cost really matters, at this point as well.
All right, Steve, stand on ground for Zach Ertz here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely the ADP cost here. I mean, Sinnott is going 150. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. This guy might not even be tight end 1 on his team, much less the top free target. I mean, in addition to the two receivers, we just talked about Luke McCaffrey. They improved their receiver depth, and they have Austin Eckler, who's been known to catch some balls out of the backfield. So when we do get to tight end targets, I am going to trust Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz kept 2 years ago Trey McBride on the bench. Trey McBride was the top tight end taken in that draft, and he couldn't get on the field because Zach Ertz was too good. Also, at the beginning of last year, Zach Ertz was pretty good until he got banged up, and then Cardinals, they were going nowhere. They released him just so he could sign to a playoff team, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Ertz has been in Kingsbury's system with the Cardinals. So yeah, there's familiarity there. Maybe Sinnott supplants him at the end of the year. But I'm not going to go, 60 spots higher to take a guy who maybe supplants him at the end of the year. And the other thing is this is not like last year where guys like Laporta, Mayer, Musgrave, those were surefire second round picks. You look at like draft pundits around, not just me, but anywhere. I believe Dane Brugler for The Athletic had Sinnott ranked as like his 118th prospect. Washington took him 52nd, 53rd overall. The NFL Network, Lance Zierlein had him as like the 6th tight end drafted. We took him as the second. Washington took him as the 2nd overall tight end. So he was definitely overdrafted in most circles. Maybe Washington's right at the end of the day, but I'm not going to bank my fantasy futures on a rookie quarterback and Washington being better than the draft consensus.
Plus, Sinnott is blocking. He's a blocking monster.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, this alludes to them wanting to run the ball. He's going to be in there over Zach Ertz on blocking plays. He's an absolute animal. If you want to go watch some cool highlights, watch him blocking. This dude makes some plays. They compared him to George Kittle, which makes sense. Adam Peters coming from that tree there, right, in San Francisco. So it makes complete sense for what he's trying to do. It's just, will the targets be there? I don't think so.
So based off of both of your opinions, I'm completely staying away from the situation. Stacks, no stacks, no thanks to the tight end of the Commanders, because my whole playbook last year on Trey McBride was that Zach Ertz isn't good. So I don't know how I can rightfully so just come back and be like, oh yeah, sure, my last pick, Zach Ertz. I don't know how I can do it. And then have Ben Sinnott kind of have at least a little bit of the narrative for a young Trey McBride. Like Steve said, Zach Ertz is able to keep him on as a rookie, but Zach Ertz is another year older. That's the other big concern there. So I think both of you might be right. Like, oh yes, Sinnott might be a value at some point when he falls. Zach Ertz definitely a value in the last round. I'm good. I'm gonna pass hard on the DC tight end position. The other guys up here I wanted to ask about. TJ Hawkinson, I'm not sure what's going on there. Some very positive movement for him, for someone who's not going to be ready to start the season. And then Jatavian Sanders, who, he's just the new guy there. What's that?
No, I said, boom. Meg checking in. She's been all over Jatavian Sanders. I mean, shout out to her. She's saying it's this year's Laporta value. I don't think he's going to do what Laporta did, but I understand what she's saying about where he's being drafted. No one ahead of him on the depth chart. So again, going almost free, ADP 207. That's pretty good. I mean, I don't know if I would want him as a tight end 2. I can see the value of it, but I would like him as a tight end 3, in my builds.
So what I would say is Jatavian Sanders, just speaking on, what draft circles thought, Sanders is much better receiving tight end. NFL Network had him as their number 2 tight end behind Brock Bowers, not Ben Sinnott. And that was most people, for Sanders. Yes, he's not the blocker, but I mean, he's going up against Ian Thomas and Tommy Tremble. Give me some Jatavian Sanders. I also like, Dave Canales coming over there. I like Bryce Young to be a little bit better. So as a late stack for your third quarterback, third tight end, easy to get in around 16 through 18 to grab 2 Carolina guys if you want a third stack going. I think he can give you some fill-in weeks, maybe a couple spike weeks when he gets in the end zone. Because that is the one thing, Carolina's receivers are not really big touchdown threats. Thielen, Deontay Johnson, who knows what Leggett and Mingo are going to be. So, maybe Sanders ends up being the red zone guy.
What do you guys think about Hawkinson? I mean, again, not going to be ready to come back. I really don't hate him, I guess, or Sanders in 3 tight end builds, but there's a clear differentiation of where you're putting them into that build. Hawkinson, almost double the ADP at 115 to Sanders is 207. So obviously Sanders very low risk at a 3 tight end build coming in as your number 3rd guy. But TJ Hawkinson, are you willing to take a prolific tight end who's talented, has all the tangibles that you're looking for once he gets on the field, but he's most likely going to be missing time?
Well, the other issue with Hawkinson is not only missing time, but he's going from Kirk Cousins, who when Cousins got injured last year was a top 4 fantasy quarterback, to Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy, who McCarthy didn't throw 300 yards in college. I mean, I think in all his games he had like three or four 300-yard games. So, and they've got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who we just talked about there. So it's not like Hawkinson's like the clear. He's not Travis Kelce. He's not the number 1 target there, even in bad quarterback play. So just the quarterback play alone, he should have been falling, from his ADP a year ago. And then you add in the injury. Right now, I'm out, and the fact that he's moving up. If he was moving down, maybe I'm starting to get interested, because then I could see some value. But moving up, I'm not a fan.
What do you think, Andrew?
So I'm looking at on Underdog. I'm looking at the tight end rankings, and he's kind of slotted in perfectly for me. Almost, he's tight end 13, so right outside of tight end 1 range. Like you said, when he's on the field, you can expect him to be good, serviceable, right? I don't think he's going to do what he did with Kirk Cousins, but where you're drafting him, you don't really need him to do that. He's slotted in behind the guys I like drafting, and right in front of the guys I'm like, I'll stack these guys, but I don't love them. I mean, he's ahead of Schultz, which by himself I don't absolutely love. With a stack is fine. Komet, same thing. Freiermuth, Sinnott, Musgrave, Henry, Otten. Like Otten's the guy there I actually like, but those other guys, like I think if you're looking at it based off of ADP and where he's going with the other tight ends, I think it's a fine pick. You need to temper expectations. So you're not going to get TJ Hawkinson last year. You'll get new TJ Hawkinson. You'll get the guy that a rookie quarterback can lean on a little bit, but not heavily target, right? Like, so he's slotted in, I think, almost perfectly with where he's at with the tight ends. So again, I think it's an okay range to take him. I'd rather have him probably unstacked because I don't love the QB situation there, but I team stack with either Addison or Aaron Jones or JJ. That to me is where it gets more interesting, is when I can team stack him as opposed to stacking him with my quarterback.
No, that's fair. And like I said, I definitely do not want to draft Hawkinson into tight end builds. I think that's very risky, but getting him into 3 builds, again, where his ADP is at, to me is just fine. But I agree with Steve. We don't want to, overspend on him. He's someone that we definitely still want to sit on, get some value. There has to be drafts where he's falling 4 to 8 picks. Like that just has to be out there. One is not coming to me that I've done myself. I'm only about 14 drafts in, but regardless, that should happen. Like there's going to be some sharp drafts where guys are pulling up someone like Cade Otton to that, maybe even like a Juwan Johnson as he gets a little bit more steam. Let's switch over to the quarterback position, because you guys kind of segued to JJ McCarthy. Today, the Vikings dropped a little bit of news that Sam Darnold is going to start off as the QB1 entering the season. Any issues with that for JJ McCarthy's value? Obviously, he's parked at the very back end of the draft, pick 177. He's only moved up 12 spots. Any concern there? And is this like a situation with like Fields and Wilson, where you just have, again, kind of have to pick your fighter or pick the guy that's you just firmly believe is going to play the most games?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I was not high on McCarthy coming in. Regardless, he was the youngest of the rookie quarterbacks, also the least experienced, drew the least number of passes. Like I said, didn't have 300-yard games. While he has some mobility, it wasn't like he ran the ball like a Daniels or a May, or even a young Penix. So it's like, what is he bringing to the table? I mean, I think long-term, and, like you guys have mentioned before, from a dynasty standpoint, yeah, I like JJ McCarthy. He's got a lot of upside potential, and obviously he's tied to some great weapons like we've just been talking about. But even if he was starting all year, I wouldn't love him, just because I think you're talking, Bryce Young part 2, maybe slightly better. But yeah, the idea that Darnold's probably taking up maybe a quarter of the season, maybe more, I'm out on McCarthy.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't have any exposure to him yet, but I have been getting some Vikings builds. I was actually sniped on him once or twice. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this situation before we dig deeper here at the position?
I think this is kind of, you got to look at it as, again, towards the end of the season, who's going to be the guy, right? Are they really going to
Mhm,
put McCarthy on the bench the entire time? I doubt it. I mean, Sam Darnold is fine, serviceable, bridge quarterback, whatever you want to call it. But at the
mhm,
same time, we've seen him bounce around from team to team. He's not an elite guy either, right? Like, I don't think McCarthy's going to stay on the bench for super long, maybe a little bit, but you're probably drafting him as your third QB mostly, maybe sometimes second. You're not going to need him right away. So once we get tomorrow night, when we find out bye weeks, this will be a guy that you could probably pair with a guy that has a bye week of like by week 9, 10, 11, and be completely fine with it. But because at that point, he'll probably end up getting on the field. So if you're pairing
mhm.
him with an elite guy, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, something like that, I think it's fine. If you're doing it where you're getting a guy who's going to have an early bye week, by week 5, 6, whatever they're going to start it at this year, I don't know. You want to do that, or if it's only two QBs, but he's a fine QB, three on your roster. But I mean, again, temper expectations because Steve alluded to it. He didn't throw for a ton of yards in college. I don't think he's going to do that in the NFL. We're probably not going to see a ton of touchdowns either. So temper expectations. But again, ADP is fine for a third quarterback on your team. And as I just alluded to, tomorrow night we will find out where some of these bye weeks are, and that's when the real fun will happen.
Agreed. We talked last week about avoiding rookie players at their cost. Definitely, players that you want to get at discount. JJ McCarthy definitely fits the criteria for a potential faller rather than the rising stats that he's showing here per the public. We would be remiss not to mention our new franchise QBs. My franchise QB might be healthier a little bit longer than yours. I don't know. We'll see. But Jaden Daniels moving up 21 spots. Caleb Williams moving up 8.5. I think we'll all agree that we're not like saying, oh yeah, rush to go get these guys right away. They're going to climb even higher. But what are your thoughts on the positions here? Are you buying these guys at their ADP? Are you holding? Are you sitting and waiting for value? What are your thoughts? We'll kick it over to Steve.
So I'm actually buying Caleb Williams' ADP. I mean, obviously I liked it a week ago when I was getting him, or 2 weeks ago when I was getting him, a round and a half later, or 3/4 of a round later. But Caleb Williams, as we talked about before, he walks in with top 5 weapons in the league. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Odunze, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. They've improved their offensive line. And he's the most ready NFL quarterback in this class as well. So yeah, I'm fine with that. He could have the CJ Stroud type season. I mean, he's got more weapons than Stroud did, and so I'm totally okay with that. Daniels is the one that to me is risky. I didn't like him when he was 21 picks later. I thought that was a little bit of a reach just because he's a spike week guy, and I think you're taking him in a position at a point where still you're talking a lot of quarterbacks who are going to still give you spike weeks and give you the consistent, 18 to 22 points most weeks, week in, week out. I mean, look at a guy we talked about before, Kirk Cousins, going way later than Jaden Daniels. Like I said, last year when he got injured, he was the 4th fantasy quarterback in the league. He goes into the situation with London, Pitts, Bijan, et cetera. Sign me up for that ADP discount. And any number of other guys. So Daniels, I get it. He's a spike week guy. I think you have to have the right type of build with him. But unlike Caleb Williams, he doesn't go into a team with elite weapons. I mean, Terry McLaurin, I think, is a stud, but we've been debating all these other guys. Jahan Dotson, who is he? Luke McCaffrey, great last name. But he was a quarterback in college for most of his college career. I like his long-term potential, but I just think we're asking a lot for Daniels to just come in and be a fantasy stud. Especially a week in, week out stud, not just hitting a couple spike weeks, and also of course the injury concerns with the way that he gets hit.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get Caleb Williams in 2 QB builds when I have the Bears stacked, definitely 3 when I don't, and I'm off Daniels as well. I do think that there is going to be a dip coming for him. I'm also arguing with that because he may get that shorts hype, playing in shorts in the summer. It's going to happen for everybody, and it could be more effective on him just because he's athletic. He can run the ball himself. But me and Andrew have been talking about this for a while now. He's most likely going to get hurt. Your offensive line is terrible, and I just don't know how much more improved it's going to be this year. I don't know if he's going to last 6 games, and that was kind of what I was alluding to with the potential injury or whatever. Caleb Williams will last longer. Anything to add in there, Andrew?
I mean, not much really. I agree with the Caleb Williams take on there, and again, unfortunately, I think Jaden Daniels will potentially get hurt. With that said, I'm not missing out on the legs of Jaden Daniels, man. Sign me up. I'm drafting him. I changed my mind. I'm all in. Let's go. I just saw him today. He was slinging the ball in the rain, not missing throws. Give me Jaden Daniels, baby. Let's go.
Shorts.
Yeah.
Shorts.
And just to a point that we talked about, like, look at Trevor Lawrence. I mean, there are other quarterbacks in this mix as well, but Trevor Lawrence going, a round later than Jaden Daniels, and Lawrence
pretty crazy.
Is one of the most stacked teams, and he uses his legs also. So I will be taking Herbert and Lawrence and Kirk Cousins as my QB2s for sure.
Love that. I also really like Gardner Minshew down here. Going in the last round just seems a bit ridiculous to me. I think he's going to have the job over Aiden O'Connell. The public is apparently not in agreement. It seems like a coin flip. I wonder if Aiden's on here. It's no action. Let's see where Aiden O'Connell's at. What are your guys' thoughts on that situation?
You always got to fade somebody with the acronym AOC.
Okay,
wow. All right. 215, the exact
2% drafted. Hey, you can get leverage there. No, I'm with you on Minshew. We saw last year with the Colts. Minshew had a couple of decent games. He's always been one to use his legs in the red zone. A really good team. We like Zamir White. We love Devontae Adams. We like Bowers. Jacoby Myers is pretty solid. It's a good, and they've improved their offensive line. So yeah, Minshew's your QB3. I'm totally good, especially if you gotten like a Adams or a Bowers early to stack them with. Easy late stack with those guys.
1,000%. And you can actually do round 17 and 18 Mayer and Minshew if you're buying the Mayer leverage like we mentioned before. Let's switch over to the fallers, and then we're going to get to some of our key fallers and risers that we're predicting upcoming, and some 0% draft targets to wrap it up here. So we're looking at Drake May, Justin Fields, Derek Carr, the disrespect, Will Levis, I love it, Baker Mayfield, Bryce Young. Guys, I don't see a name here other than maybe Deshaun Watson that I'm not buying. Like, I can still be talked into Justin Fields. Very similar to the argument that we're making, any argument that we make for like a JJ McCarthy, other than the fact that we've seen Fields be a fantasy superstar. I have no issues with any of these names here. I would consider all of these guys buys, other than, like I said, Deshaun Watson. He would be someone that I would want after ADP, and I would need to have some Browns already drafted. Any disagreement here? Like, are there any names here that you are not drafting, guys?
I'm not drafting Fields. It does sound like it's Russ's job, and I know Fields, they'll find ways to use him and whatnot, and that could probably just hurt Russ's fantasy value more than helping Fields. Fields is getting a rushing touchdown every third game. It's not going to help you too much. But what I would say is, other than that, I'm with you. Sign me up for all these guys. Guys like Cousins, Rodgers, Stafford, Herbert in the middle, guys like Levis and Mayfield and Bryce Young, Carr even, and Drake May. I mean, we just talked about the JJ McCarthy situation. May's probably in the same boat where Jacoby Brissett's going to start. May's going 20 picks later, and he's got a much better profile. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. Yes, he doesn't have the weapons that McCarthy has, but I will take May over JJ McCarthy pretty much every time.
Interesting. Andrew, anything to add to this group?
I mean, being a best ball sicko, I'm going to do a bazillion drafts, so I'll have every single one of these guys. But the guys I don't really want to draft, that I will but don't want to, is for me anyway, it's May and Bryce Young. Those are the two guys I don't really want to draft personally. I'll draft a little Fields when I have some stack going on in Pittsburgh, because I mean, Russ is Russ. He'll do Russ things and he'll play decent, but at the same time, I think they're going to have a little bit of a package for Fields, and the end of the year, it gets colder, and what you do when it gets a little colder is run the ball a little bit more effectively, and maybe they put him in there for some goal line stuff. And I think that Tomlin's going to get a little creative with Fields. They're not just going to let him ride the bench. So I'll draft a little bit of him too, but I mean, May and Young are two guys I don't want to draft at all if I don't have to, but I'll have a little bit of them just because.
Yeah, that's fair. Bryce Young, obviously not a great rookie season, but I think that they're doing their due diligence to build around him. So I really don't hate it with my last pick, my pick 17. I'm really okay with that. It's just some of these other guys, like there's a lot of other players I like around Deshaun Watson ADP. Drake May, I'm kind of also out on. I guess I should probably add him to the Deshaun Watson list just because it's very similar to the McCarthy or any other rookie running back situations. You're just not getting the full value there. If I have stacks, if I really got desperate at tight end and I go like Hunter Henry, I guess I don't mind it. It kind of fits that same second half, week 16, 17, 18, stuff like that. So yeah, nothing really else to throw on there. Let's switch over because we're going to wrap it up here relatively quickly. What are a few 0% drafted players you guys might consider or you could recommend? Could be a guy like Cam Akers that's listed here. I know he's a free agent. Guys that I like are like Juju Smith-Schuster, Hunter Renfrow. Guys that I still think are going to put up some production, could get you a spike week. Any names that you guys might bring to the forefront here for our viewers?
So, Steve, have you looked over this list yet?
I've looked at it a little bit, and some aren't necessarily zero guys, but I looked at I had some guys who were like 10% or lower that I wanted to point to, and it includes a couple guys who Trey Palmer, wide receiver 3 for the Buccaneers. Yes, they just drafted Jalen McMillan, but Palmer had decent usage last year down the stretch. Solid offense. I don't mind him, as a 8th receiver type thing. The other one that I had, Theo Johnson. This is very contingent on if we get Waller news that he's retiring, but I think he could end up being the rookie tight end, the super late rookie tight end. And then finally, the other one would be Evan Hall. He's 9% right now. Probably the Colts' number 2 back, and I think they have Trey Sermon there. But yeah, I'll take some shots at Evan Hall, who looked good in the preseason last year and in week 1 before he got injured. And Jonathan Taylor's coming off some injuries, and I don't mind taking a shot at very similar to kind of what we talked about the Dameon Pierce situation, where pretty good offense, just a contingent value. If Mixon goes down, Dameon Pierce is just a massive value. If Taylor goes down, you're getting Evan Hall as your 18th round pick. I'll take a few shots on that.
Yes, I agree with the Evan Hall one as well. Shout out friend of the program, Ginder. He actually, I was in a draft with him and he mentioned that. He's like, he just asked me what I thought about him, and it kind of made me think a little bit. So I went over and started looking at the depth chart. I'm like, he is the number 2. Like, that's a really good point out. So shout out to him. I agree with you there, Steve, on that. You already alluded to it, Bruni. Juju, don't love it, but he is 0% drafted. It's an interesting one, at least. You never know what's going to happen in that offense with the wide receivers that are there, but don't love it. MVS, correct me if I'm wrong, he's 0%. He just now got signed. Don't love it for the Bills, but here's MVS is fine. He's an okay wide receiver, but if he didn't put together with Patrick Mahomes, I don't think he's putting it together with Josh Allen either. So he is 0% drafted. Maybe if you want to stick him in there with a Josh Allen stack, fine. Not somebody I'm going to really be drafting, but he's at least in there. Jacoby Brissett in there. Not a terrible one. The other one that is 0%, and if the dude in front of him gets hurt, could this guy just be an absolute animal? But Luke Schoonmaker, no, not drafted, behind Jake Ferguson as the 2 on the team. They don't really have a great passing core. I mean, they have Lamb and Cooks, which are fine in itself, but behind that, Ferguson, and then God knows what. So Schoonmaker's interesting. If Ferguson ever goes down, Schoonmaker could be an absolute steal, an animal, and targets. So just food for thought there. Not saying to go draft him, but maybe as a tight end 3 if you have Dak and you just want to get a little different, because there's a billion players playing in BBM, right? Like, you're going to need to beat people some way or another, and you got to be a little different. So that's my piece on Loon Shoemaker. I just, when I saw that name, I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot about him. And it was interesting to see that nobody has drafted him yet at all.
This says no one's drafted Joe Flacco. The disrespect. The disrespect. What does this man have to do? I mean, throw
back
in a
on the
wheelchair?
I actually will give you one more 0% guy, and that's Cordero Patterson.
There you go.
Comes over with Arthur Smith, who used him a fair bit with the Falcons. Also, new kickoff return rules. He could give you a couple spike weeks just from that, getting a kickoff touchdown and a couple carries and catches. And, if anything happens to Jaylen Warren, Patterson could be their pass catching back. The guy splitting with Najee Harris. And Warren is a smaller back. So just, and this is another team where after the top two receivers, Roman Wilson being one of them, a rookie, they don't have a lot in the receiving department. So, I'm not going to take a lot, but I will take a shot or two just given the situation of the coaching, the, special teams addition. And, maybe he just has this real hybrid, slot receiver, gadget guy type thing that he gets you a handful of weeks that he's hitting value.
Love it. Love it. I'll, like I said, I threw out Hunter Renfrow. We already talked about Juju. I just came across Deuce Vaughn, Taysom Hill. Not great, but Taysom Hill, he's helped us. He's done it for us. He's just not going to perform only at the QB position. That's what makes it obviously very tough. You'd have to be in kind of a weird situation, I think, to bring him in as a QB. And Deuce Vaughn wasn't amazing last year as a rookie. His dad works for the team. His dad's coaching. I'm just going to say it helps out a little bit. And just the fact that Dowdle, underwhelming, Zeke, underwhelming, 0% is very interesting for him. And then Kyle Granson is a guy that I really like, tight end for the Colts, someone that I do think could at least lead the targets for the tight end position. I don't know if that's going to be amazing just because they are pretty deep there, but he's someone that I could see rise to the top. A tight end that I am definitely loading up into my late tight end builds for certain. All right, before we head out, let's each cover one or two players that we think is either going to rise up the board as we progress or fall down the board. Andrew, who do you have up here for us?
What do you want, riser or faller first?
Whatever you prefer.
All right, well, let's go riser. I just put down a list of names. I'm going to go through them. We talked about a lot of these guys. There's only like two. I'll probably actually give you a little synopsis on here. Josh Palmer, again, probably the wide receiver one to start. I do like that. Zamir White, we've already talked about. I have Eckler or Robinson. One of them is going to rise depending on how we see them running with the ones. So in OTAs and training camp, one of them guys is going to be running with the ones more than the other probably. So I expect to see that guy move up. Gus Bus, again, we alluded to it. They're going to have a ton of opportunities on the ground there. So that's somebody I expect to rise. George Pickens, I just think he's going to rise above a couple of the wide receivers that are in front of him with the opportunity that he now has as the number one in Pittsburgh. Zay Jones, just because he's now way back in the draft or in drafts, and he has now been brought on by the Arizona Cardinals. And then, of course, we already talked about Malachi Corley. So those are my risers. Do you want me to go to fallers or do you want to go to Steve's risers?
Yeah, go right into your fallers as well.
All right, Neighbors, we already touched on that. I just think that he's going to fall behind the guys that are behind him. I've Gabe Davis as a faller. Again, I think that just the guys behind him are going to be drafted before him as a probably 4 on his team in targets in my eyes. AD Mitchell, we already talked about him a little bit. I think Josh Downs and him are going to have way more competition than people think. So I expect him to go down the board a little bit. Michael Wilson with the addition of Zay Jones. And then lastly, Bruni, I know that you're going to have him on your risers. We discovered this, but DeAndre Swift, I think Philadelphia made him a little bit. I don't think that he's going to perform as well in Chicago. I'm also a Roschon Johnson staunch here. I like Roschon a lot more than the average Bear. So I think he will fall a little bit, not a ton, but you'll probably see him maybe fall 2 rounds at the, in July somewhere.
How about you, Steve?
So let me go with a couple risers. Some, and I'm totally fully in agreement with Andrew, so I won't mention those again. But a couple of risers. Joe Mixon, he's RB15 right now. I think he could move up. I think he's got a bigger touchdown role than, as much as I like James Cook, but this could be another top elite offense in Houston. And I think Mixon is a much higher touchdown role. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him bump up there. Another running back, Najee Harris. We talked a little bit about with the ADP thing. The Arthur Smith bump, his touchdown production, 1,000 yards every year. Arthur Smith, just his offense being improved in general. And let's not forget the fact that Najee Harris there was a point late in the season where Najee Harris actually had more 15-plus yard runs than Christian McCaffrey. Was he getting the 60-yard runs that Christian McCaffrey's getting? No. But that was behind a terrible offense coordinator, a weak O-line, and Najee Harris was getting it done. With all the hype that Warren got, Harris is their bell cow. So I really like that. And then a couple of receivers that I'll point to that we haven't mentioned yet. Well, we kind of mentioned Calvin Ridley. I think he's going way, way, way too low with how I see this Tennessee offense just hitting the ground running this year. And the other receiver that I wanted to point to, or two other receivers, Cortland Sutton. I think he's going to be Bo Nix's best friend. He was so good with Russ Wilson and just an absolute red zone monster last year. Had some of the biggest highlight catches of the year. And I think he's going as wide receiver 50. I think he easily outplays that ADP and in ranking. And I mentioned Rashidi Rice when we talked about before, so I won't go into him again. So the final receiver that I have is a later one, but a guy who I think is going overlooked, and that's Jalen Tolbert. The Cowboys, they let go of Michael Gallup. Tolbert was getting more work down the stretch. I would not be surprised if Tolbert is like their wide receiver 3 this year, maybe even push Cooks for the wide receiver 2 late in the season. You're essentially getting him around 17, 18. Sign me up for, again, the team that threw the most passing touchdowns in the league last year. So those are my key risers. A couple fallers that we have not already talked about that I like, or that I'm avoiding right now. Excuse me. Well, you actually mentioned him, Christian Watson. I'm out on all Packers receivers not named Jaden Reed. So I'm essentially out on all of them. While I love the Bills offense, I'd much rather target it through Kincaid and Keon Coleman, and of course the running backs. And then the final one, excuse me, is we talked about him a little bit, but Jerry Jeudy. I like Amari Cooper. I like Njoku, but as you mentioned, Deshaun Watson, I just don't trust him. I don't trust him to carry enough receivers on this offense. I think Jerry Jeudy, he's going ahead of guys like we mentioned before, Jahan Dotson, Brandon Cooks, guys like other positions. So those are the guys I'm just kind of out on at where they're going that we hadn't already previously talked about.
I like it, like a lot of those names. My fallers are a bit of a callback to last week. I've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, just too rich for my blood at this time. Believe the farther away we get from the NFL draft, the more value we get on those guys. I'm going to argue that the Ravens are buyers at the wide receiver position. I've been arguing that Mike Thomas could land there. I still feel like they might want a piece. If not, then maybe you target Devontae Walker, someone that I really like that has that path to potentially get a bulk of targets if there was an injury. And then Jordan Addison is also another faller, someone that we alluded to kind of with the J.J. McCarthy situation, just having uncertainty in that offense. You still have Justin Jefferson there. TJ Hawkinson could come back and take some of that available target share away from him. So he's someone that I think will fall as we get closer or as we progress through the offseason. And then my risers, I do have DeAndre Swift. I do think, like, Andrew, you've been arguing, Caleb Williams, still a rookie QB. He's got all of these weapons around him, but maybe he could be a little more underwhelming than people expect. That just leads to more running back touches. DeAndre Swift is going to be the guy for them. Even if they utilize somehow a 3 running back backfield, I still expect DeAndre Swift to get a bulk of the work. And from what we've seen from Roschon and Herbert last year, it just wasn't working. They were kind of middling each other for opportunities, and no one was really outshining the other at a massive rate. Austin Eckler, you've already alluded to, going to definitely gain steam just as more public drafters get in. It's Austin Eckler. Someone's going to look at that's doing 5 to 7 best ball drafts and go, what? I'll move him up 5 rounds. No problem. Kind of similar situation, Raheem Mostert and Deontay Johnson, the last 2 guys that I have. You just look at what Mostert was able to do last year. I understand they drafted a running back. You still have Devon Achane. it's the Dolphins. They're going to spread the ball around. Mostert being in a top offense, it's a great opportunity. And Deontay Johnson, just a ton of public love. He's going at about pick 82 right now. I could easily see him climbing another round, maybe 2, as there'll be more talk about, the change that he is going to be that guy. Toss in training camp videos, all the hype. I mean, he just runs such clean routes, gets himself open, creates separation. I think he's just very mispriced, just like he was last year. So that wraps it up. Anything you guys want to share before we head on out and bid our fans adieu?
No, I think it was a great show.
I mean, I want to shout out Steve. His recent article on the rookies was very good. I read through it, so I did put the link in the chat here if anybody wants to come back through and click on that. Obviously, you can just go to fanspeak.com. It is on the homepage, so definitely check that out. But link is in the chat.
Love it. Anything to share, Steve?
I am working on an article right now, actually about ADP. So this show is very perfect. I just released my rankings and kind of comparing some of that. It's a lot of the guys we talked about tonight. So you can check that out right now. The article should be out tomorrow. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. And we're going to be doing. Meg and I are going to be doing a show with the schedule release tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about the schedule and run a draft tomorrow night.
We will be there. We'll be in the streets with you. That's for sure. Try not to snipe all my Bears guys. I appreciate that. Yeah, me and Andrew will also be back Thursday. We've got a lot of good stuff cooking. We are in the planning stages for Underdog cardio drafts, so look out for those in the upcoming weeks. It's finally started, so you'll definitely see me and Andrew hitting the bikes. Like Steve said, him and Meg will be live tomorrow. Andrew and I will be back Thursday night. So take care, be well, be good. If you can't be good at it. We'll see you.